Okay, folks, in this segment of the video, we are going to be learning about the Move tool here. Now, the Move tool does have another tool nested underneath of it called the Artboard tool, but for our purposes, we will stick with just learning the Move tool. You folks can learn about the Artboard tool on your own. Now, you will see me referencing the layer box or layer palette area a lot while I'm using the Move tool or any of the other tools for that matter. Um, a lot of these tools do work in conjunction with the layer panel area or layer panel palette. For now, disregard the layer panel area. The reason being is it's such a complex um, item to learn that it requires an entire video all on its own. So I will make an entire video just for the layer system after I do all of the tools here on the left. Just concentrate for now on what the tool does, the tool that I'm currently showing you, as well as the other tools in the future. Concentrate on what the tool does and get a sense of its functions and its purpose in creating content in the document area. Then once I show you folks the layer system, then everything will start to make a little bit more sense. But for now, just concentrate on what the tool does. That being said, let's check out the Move tool here. In keeping with its name, all it does is it moves items around. Okay. Now, you can move different items, of course, while using the layer system here. You do also have an option here called auto select, and if that is checked, then activating instead of selecting the layer that the object is on in order to move the object, you could just click directly on the object and move it without having to go to the layer panel to select the object. This may seem a little bit more convenient, and in certain situations it is. Personally, I leave my auto select off only because it gives me a little bit more control and I don't accidentally click on an object and move it. See? So I'm clicking on the other objects right now, but I'm still only moving the red square because only the red square layer is active. So it's your call if you folks want to use the auto select or not. I tend to leave mine off. Okay, now if you folks take a look here in this area, we have alignment buttons. Now the alignment buttons only come into view if the Move tool is active. The alignment buttons are good to align the object, your active object, in a certain space. Usually, to make the alignment buttons active, you have to have two objects selected. The first object will be the starting point or reference point. The second object is the object that you want to move or align in relation to the first object. It's a little bit, maybe a little bit confusing. Let me show you folks. I'm going to turn the visibility off on the blue and green shapes, and just have the red and the red square and the background visible. Now in my layer panel, I'm going to select both the background and the red square, and as soon as I did that, you notice that my alignment buttons all of a sudden lit up. Okay, so these are just like the justification guides that you folks may have, like in Microsoft Word or any type of other word processing program, where you can do a left justification for the words so that they stick to the left or right justification or middle and whatnot. So let me go ahead and show you folks. If you want the red square to align to the left edge here, just got to click that. You can make it align to the right edge or smack dab in the middle. For these set of alignments, this is to align the square to the top, bottom, and middle. So as you can imagine, sometimes this is a preferable type of tool to use if you have multiple objects where you want all of them in the center together and you want them perfectly aligned. So let me show you that right now. I'm going to bring back the visibility of the triangle and the circle, and I want all of them to be smack dab in the middle. So I'm going to have to choose all of them in the layer panel area. Now with all of them selected, I'll do that. Or actually, I'm going to click the middle justification and then the middle justification vertically. So right now I have all of them perfectly aligned in the middle. Okay, so that's what the alignment buttons do. And in order to make them active, you have to have at least two objects active or selected here in the layer panel area. And once again, I will show you that once more a little bit later when I teach you folks about the layer system. But just know that the move tool basically moves objects around on your document. Okay folks, in this segment we are going to be learning the rectangular Marquee tool, which is right below the move tool. Now nested below the rectangle Marquee tool is the elliptical Marquee tool, single row and single column Marquee tools. For our purposes, for our project, all we will be learning about is the rectangular and elliptical Marquee tool. The other two you folks can learn on your own. Okay, it's quite easy to draw out a Marquee tool, or Marquee selection, I should say. These are selection tools. All you have to do is left mouse click and hold it down and drag out a square. So left mouse click and hold that left mouse click down, drag your mouse to the right or to the left, and once you release, you commit to that shape. You can do it as much times as you like. Every time you click your left mouse button, you create a new selection. Once you let go, that selection stays until you left mouse click and drag again. You can make thin lines, thick lines, small rectangles, huge rectangles, small squares, and large squares. Okay? If you want to constrain your rectangle into a square, meaning if you want to make a perfect sided square equal on all sides, when you are creating your rectangle, if you hold down the shift key at the same time, it locks or constrains the Marquee selection into a perfect sided square. So right now I'm moving my mouse all over the place, but all I get is a square. Now once I let go of the shift key, I'm holding it down right now as I move my mouse around, but if I ever let go of the shift key, you notice that I can now move my mouse around and change the shape of the rectangle or square. Holding down the shift key, it locks it to a perfect sided square. Okay, so remember, if you want a perfect sided square, hold down the shift key as you drag select out. Okay, another thing to notice is you folks can see my cursor right now. It's a crosshatch or a cross. Once I move that cursor into the middle of the selection lines, these dancing ants or moving dotted lines, whatever you want to call them, you notice that the cursor changes to a white triangle or white arrow. That allows you to move the selection square around. Okay. Now, if you want to deselect or take this selection lines away, there's a bunch of ways you guys can deselect. You guys can go off the canvas or outside of the composition area here in the dark gray area in the workspace, and just click once, left mouse click once. That'll deselect. Okay. You could also right click and from the drop down menu choose deselect. You could also go up to the select menu here in the menu bar, click on it. From the drop down menu you have deselect. Also take note that you have a hotkey to deselect, which is Command D on the Macs, and this will be Control D on the PCs. Okay, click that to deselect. So that's pretty much 4 ways to unselect or deselect anything. Let me show you the Eclipse selection button or tool. I'm sorry. Okay, so I have the Eclipse selection tool, and same thing like the rectangle, you can make ovals or circles of any shape, or not any shape, I'm sorry, any size or length. Okay, real thin, thick. Okay, and just like the rectangle marquee tool, if you hold down your shift key as you're drag selecting, you'll be constrained to a perfect circle. Okay, moving your mouse while you're holding down the left mouse button will change the size of the perfect circle, but not the overall shape of it. Once you let go of the shift key, then you're able to change the size of the oval or elliptical, and holding down the shift key will snap it to a perfect circle until you let go. Just like the rectangular marquee tool, if you move your cursor in the middle, you can move that circle around. To deselect, click off to the side here in the dark gray area, or right click, choose deselect from the menu, or come up to select, deselect, or keyboard shortcut Command D on a Mac, Control D on a PC. Okay. So I've shown you folks how to draw out the selection lines, these marching ants lines, these dancing dots, whatever nickname you want to give them. But what really does the selection tool do? I'll show you right now. The selection tool is probably the one tool that you folks will use the most in Photoshop. So get familiar, practice, and know it like the back of your folks' hands. Okay, because there's so much you can do with this tool. We may not even have a chance to cover everything that the selection tool can do. I'm going to show you folks the real basic stuff. First of all, as it is right now, whatever is on the inside of the selection tool is affected. Whatever is on the outside is not affected. To demonstrate this, I'm going to use the paintbrush tool. Let me switch colors to black first. Or actually, I'll switch to white. Okay. So I have my paintbrush tool selected, and I'm going to paint over this picture, but you'll notice that only whatever is on the inside of the selection lines, the dancing dots, the marching ants, gets affected. Anything outside of that does not. So here's my paintbrush target cursor, I guess you could say, I'm going to start painting outside here. I'm actually holding down my left mouse button right now and I'm stroking back and forth. But as you notice, it only happens, or it only lays down paint strokes when the cursor comes on the inside of the dotted lines. Once the cursor passes the dotted lines on the outside, nothing happens. Okay? So as you can see, this is one function of the selection tool. It kind of creates a boundary, if you will, so that only the affected area is able to be edited, and everything outside of the affected area is non-editable. Okay, so let me back that up there. You can also do the inverse. So if I right click here, oh, I'm sorry, I have to select the selection tool again. It's kind of good that that happens. If you're using multiple tools at the same time, sometimes, and even I forget, that you have to switch back to the previous tool to enact another action. In this case, instead of having whatever's on the inside be affected, we wanted to reverse it so that whatever is on the outside of the circle is affected and whatever is on the inside is not affected. I was on the brush tool and I tried to do a right click, but I got the sub menu for the paintbrush. In order to get the sub menu for the selection tool, I have to go back to the selection tool and activate it by clicking on it, then come back to the selection and right click, and then I have this drop down menu. And the second option here, select inverse, will allow me to inverse the selection. So now you see I got the dotted lines on the outside as well. So right now, whatever's on the inside of the circle will not be affected. Whatever's on the outside will be. So now let's go back to our brush tool and start painting. And watch what happens when I come to the selection line here. You notice I can't paint on the inside of the selection anymore. That's because the opposite or inverse is currently being selected. Now, if I wanted to switch it again, I would have to go up to my selection tool, select it, then come back down here, right click, select inverse again, and then go back to the paintbrush, click that. Now if I continue, you notice the opposite or inverse has been selected once more. Okay, so that's pretty much what the selection tool does. Is it kind of acts like a boundary, and whatever's on the inside is affected, whatever is on the outside is not affected. And of course you can reverse that to where whatever is on the outside is affected, whatever on the inside is not affected. Okay, so let me show you another function. So right now, whatever is on the inside is affected, right? We can delete whatever is on the inside simply by hitting delete on the keyboard if you're on a Mac, or backspace if you are on a PC keyboard. So I'm going to go ahead and hit delete on my keyboard. Oh, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. It's edit and clear for the Macs. You notice it turned black. I'll explain a little bit about that later. Let me switch the colors here. Okay, now if I hit the delete, I keep making that mistake. See, folks, even I keep making mistakes, even as experienced as I am. Clear. There you go. So edit clear on the Macs, and the backspace key on the PCs. So you can delete the picture if you want it in the selected area. Um, you can cut out whatever is on a selected part with your item selected. Just go up to the move tool here, click on the move tool to activate it, and left mouse click to and drag to cut out the shape. Okay, so that's doable. Well, what would happen if I reverse the selection? Well, to reverse the selection or inverse it, I would have to go back to my selection tool again, right click, select inverse. You notice that the dotted lines are on the outside too now. Go back to my move tool, and now if I left mouse click and drag, I drag out the rest, but the middle stays. Okay, so that's select and select inverse for you. Okay, now let's inverse the selection again. Select inverse, so just that part is selected. You can also edit the image, so whatever is on the inside here is going to be affected. I can go to image, adjustments, hue, saturation, click on that. I got this box here. For the first item here, hue, I can drag this arrow up or down the slider and watch what happens in the middle. You can change the color. If I went down to lightness, I can change the brightness or darkness. I could change the saturation, make it really, really saturated or really dull color, almost grayish white. Okay. And as you notice, it only affected the inside because that's currently selected. Let me go ahead and hit cancel. And of course, if I right click on this and select inverse and do the same thing, come up to image, adjustments, hue, saturation, click on that. Now if I change the hue, it changes the outside. Lightness, darkness on the outside. And of course saturation on the outside, while the inside stays unaffected. I'm going to hit cancel, right click and select inverse again. So as you can see, the selection tool is very powerful. It acts as a boundary where whatever is on the inside, or if you select the inverse, whatever is on the outside gets affected, while the opposite is unaffected. Okay? So the selection tool is powerful. You can also cut out shapes with it and whatnot. There's more selection tools that kind of their functions are the same, but the way they select items is different. Right now we are messing around with just the rectangular select tool or rectangular marquee tool, so you're pretty much restricted to a square, a rectangle, an elliptical, or a circle. Okay, which is kind of limiting, right? But at least it gives you folks an idea of how the selection tool works. Okay, and one last time with the paintbrush. I have black enabled right now, so as you can see, and if I go back to my selection tool, right click, select inverse, and back to the paintbrush. Now I can paint outside but not on the inside. Okay, so that's what the selection tools do. They form boundaries, if you will, to where you can affect only a portion of the picture. Okay, so keep that in mind when you folks are cropping out pictures or making cuts or edits to pictures, that the selection line tools are very powerful. One last thing before we wrap up on the Marquee select tools or Marquee tools is I just switched over to a blank canvas here. You can actually create shapes, albeit just a rectangle, square, an oval, or a circle, and you can fill it with colors. Okay, so let me go ahead with the rectangle Marquee select tool or rectangle Marquee tool selected. Let me go ahead and draw out a rectangle here. Now it's plain, but we can fill it with a color. Okay, now I have two colors down here. White is the background, as you can see. And I can fill the rectangle with black, but I'm going to choose red. So I'm going to come here to my color picker panel, and I want to get a bright red. So you notice where my cursor is here. I'm going to click in the upper right hand corner, and you notice the color here changed to red, as well as the color here changed to red. So both sides, here and here to the left. Now you can choose any color you want in this entire range. So I moved this cursor in the upper right hand corner. If I move it around, watch the color here as I move the cursor around the entire square. Watch the color here. The color changes as you move your cursor around, but for our demonstration purposes I'm going to leave it up here, kind of going off on a tangent with the color palette right now. Okay, so you've drawn out your rectangle shape with the Marquee select tool. Now if I hit delete key on the Mac, you notice I get the fill dialog box. Before, in the past, Photoshop used to delete whatever was on the inside of the selection when you hit the delete key. So I'm so used to that. I'm not used to the fact that now you can fill a color on the inside of the selection when you hit the delete key on a Mac. You PC guys, I believe, I'm not 100% sure because it's been a while since I've been on a PC, but maybe you might be able to delete whatever is on the inside of the selection with your backspace key. But I have a feeling that hitting the backspace key on a PC will bring up this fill dialog as well. And if you want to delete something, you have to use the keys, the delete key above the arrow keys on the PC keyboard to delete whatever is on the inside of the selection. Otherwise, you get this fill dialog box. And then with the contents, you have a drop down menu here. If you click on the inside, want to go with foreground color. So contents, click on here and make sure foreground is selected and hit OK. And you notice I fill the area with red. Okay, let me undo that by holding down Command Z or hitting Command Z, Control Z for you PC guys to undo. can also go edit, fill. You get the same dialog box that we did by hitting the delete key on the keyboard, and you could click OK. Hit Command Z again to undo. You can also right click, go down to fill. You get the dialog box once more, hit OK. And finally, if you want the hotkey to fill in your foreground color, which is red in our case, on the Mac, you hold down Option and you tap the delete key. So Option delete. For you PC guys, it'll be Alt delete. And that fills in the foreground color into your selection here. Okay, folks, so that's the Marquee Select tools, or Marquee tools, and an introduction into the selection tools. Now, all I've shown you here will be more or less applicable to the next couple of tools, which would be the lasso and magic wand tools. Okay, so stay tuned for that in our next segment of the video.